There are over 80,000 pharmaceutical salespeople employed by the drug industry in the United States alone. My understanding is that's about 1 for every 4 doctors. Their job is to sell drugs. Their job is not to educate doctors. Their job is not to provide medical information. They have one job and one job only, to push their product, particularly against other competing products.
Let's be honest, they're there to sell their drug. They're not there to educate doctors. They get paid, they get bonuses on how much drugs the doctor prescribes, not whether the doctor is prescribing the most appropriate drug.
If there's anything in American or Western society that sort of dominates our cultural life, it's advertising. Advertising costs millions of dollars for the Super Bowl, for a minute. And the reason it does is because it works. Because by spending a few $1,000,000 on advertising, you make billions of dollars. And the drug industry is very good at advertising.
Before 1980, most clinical research was funded by the National Institutes of Health. Academic researchers, quote, snubbed their noses at doing commercially funded research. When President Reagan came into office, the economy was slow, the ethos was small government, and the NIH funding of clinical studies went down dramatically. The drug companies were very happy to come in and lend a helping hand. Nothing much changed until 1991 because the studies were still being done in universities. But during the 90s, most of that research got pulled out of universities and was brought to for-profit research organizations. Now, nothing inherently unethical about that. It was more efficient and quicker for the drug companies. The problem is that gave virtual complete control over the research to the drug companies. They could design the studies. They have control of data so that many of the authors of the most important articles published in our best journals aren't even allowed to see their own data.
The data are so hidden and so complex, whether it's gene therapy or whether it's the number of people who die of heart attacks while taking Vioxx. We have to rely on researchers to provide us with that evidence. And I think the most shocking thing is to find that evidence is simply not available, or it is distorted. And some of it is hidden as trade secrets. Federal trade secrets laws, commercial interests, allow drug companies to withhold some of this information. And I just recently found out, for example, that the Food and Drug Administration does not report all the deaths it knows about in patients who are on certain drugs, because these are considered federal trade secrets.
Right now, the FDA does not require drug companies to submit television ads or any other drug ads before they air. They only have to submit them after the fact. So the ad will already be on TV or in a magazine, and the FDA, if it eventually gets around to doing something about an ad it considers deceptive, may be too late.
Doctors started telling me these stories about drugs and therapies that they were prescribing, and they were shocked, they were horrified, because they find out that these therapies, one after another, were actually causing more harm than good. And they wanted to know how it happened. They couldn't believe that they were giving medicines to people that were actually, in some instances, killing patients.
I think it's really short-sighted to think that this is a matter of bad drug companies or bad people pulling things over on us. They're doing what they're supposed to do. If we want it to be different, we have to insist on it. And the ways in which we insist on it is multi-pronged, but it includes our government. Of course it does. Right now, our government is not terribly interested in making any reforms that would be useful, because they're very beholden to the drug companies. If we want to change that, we have to make them beholden to us. We have to have the clout and the influence and the organization to make it that they can't blithely go along making the FDA be something that has been widely and famously called a servant of the drug industry. We have to make it the FDA is a servant of us.